Bum 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 bum. Hey YouTube, it's your friend Dominic Tringali again. So this is another issue of Star Wars Build the Millennium Falcon. This is going to be issue number 12. Again, $10.99 for each issue after the first. So with the 11 previous issues in this one, it brings up the grand total to €124.39. Well spent money, I have to say. So we have this illustrious model that give you an idea of what the final product's going to be like. Right now what we have doesn't look anything like that, but ultimately the end product will. So let's jump right into what's in this particular issue and talk about that. So we have this interesting article about the YT-1300 FP, which last time we talked about the freight and the personnel transport, and this FP is kind of the half and half model. You know, the great thing about the YT-1300 was always its versatility, and the FP is probably the most versatile of them all. It's a mixed transport and cargo carrier. Alright, so some stuff about that. And we have this beautiful actual diagram of the inside of the Falcon. Okay. I don't remember where originally this came from, but I've seen this image before in a technical readout book that I had years ago. I can't remember which one it was. And then we have this lovely blueprint. And it's not really a blueprint, but just a diagram of the layout. All right, great, of a YT-1300 FP variant. Okay, and then for some reason they explain with this issue of Secrets of Spacecraft what roll, pitch, and yaw is, and essentially like how somebody goes about controlling a spaceship. We have this definition of what pitch, roll, and yaw is, and how exactly somebody would control a starship, thrust vectoring, whatnot, scale effects. So, I mean, this is an interesting side article. They talk about why in the second film, The Empire Strikes Back, why they had to, let me see if I can pull focus there, why they had to actually build a different model. This model that we're building with this model kit is a one-for-one replica of the Millennium Falcon from that film. It was much smaller. The original model they had was like 5 feet long or something like that, but that was for the New Hope, and it was they had a hard time getting a lot of the camera shots because it was so big and moving it around. So they made a slightly smaller model, one that was only about a meter long instead. It helped them out dramatically. And then we have this Guide to the Galaxy article on Coruscant locations, talking about Monument Plaza, the Jedi Council. Just kind of flushes out that earlier article that we had read about Coruscant and gives us some interesting planetary information about the planet itself. You know, Coruscant being the capital of the Old Republic. And I believe even under the Galactic Empire, the Emperor still operated out of Coruscant, just as a means of consolidating his power base, very strategically located in the universe. Okay, so yeah, more articles talking about the architecture of the planet, architecture of the buildings, some early matte paintings of the planet Coruscant, what it was going to look like, and they kind of went away with that later on, making it more industrial in certain areas and more modern. Here we have the industrial sector where Count Dooku flees at the end of the second film, Revenge of the Sith. I'm sorry, Attack of the Clones. And, this is an abandoned sector, very dangerous apparently, some sort of chemical spill or radioactive leak or something like that. They call it the dead sector for good reason. So, this issue, issue number 12, we get another bag of parts. So let's pop this open and see what we find. Alright, so it's all taken out of the packaging, and we'll go from biggest to smallest. So we get this very plain lower hull piece. I'm hoping that more pieces go on top of this because it's completely blank, has no detailing on it whatsoever. So I'm hoping that other sheets overlap this one so that it's not so ridiculously non-specific. I mean, the other pieces that we got at least had some partial detailing, so I assume that we'll be overlapping plates to make it look the way it's supposed to. Then we get some more framing pieces. That takes us up to 6 lower framing pieces. We'll be assembling those today and actually getting some lower frame work. Then we have this piece which actually goes to that main hold. I'm not quite sure where that goes yet. I'll figure that out with the instructions. I don't think we're going to do anything with that this time around. I will hold back and keep that to the next issue. And we get some more of these bags of pieces, these screws, these adapter pieces to add to our collection. We'll be using these today along with the ones that we got in the previous issues, and we'll actually start assembling our lower framing work. Okay, so let's jump right into it and see what we get. Okay, so I've taken all 6 pieces of framing that I've gotten in the last few issues and I've laid them out like this, just how the diagram and the instructions show me. I have these 4 supporting rods and these 2 connectors that actually bring the supporting rods together, and I have a whole bunch of screws and 2 and 4 hole connector pieces. I'm going to hold those together and start screwing together, and then we'll see what we get after the first step. Okay, the first 3 steps in this issue had me take this piece right here and attach this rod right here, putting the first screw right here and the second screw, and then tightening the 2 of them together. The next step has me joining this flange piece to this piece right here. So I'll go ahead and screw those together and then show you what that looks like. Okay, so after 6 steps, I've attached these 2 pieces together with this rod right here, and it's pretty good here. Okay, so the next step, according to my instructions, are to take this piece right here and mount it in like so, and then I'll be taking one of those 2-pin adapters and putting it right into that hole right there, those 2 holes, joining the 2 of them together finally. Great, so we've attached with this magnetic screwdriver, which is really useful for all these small pieces, picking them up and applying them into the right spot. We've attached it here, and we've used this 2-pin connector attach here. So now all 3 of these pieces have formed into one unified framework, very Voltron-esque. So the next step is to put the piece that goes right here in, and so I'll show you what that looks like. So I attached this last 4th screw. So I put this last 4th screw right here for the 4-point adapter with this framing column, and then I attached a second column here, putting these 2 points in, leaving these 4 holes. Let me see if you can see them. These 4 holes are exposed, but the next step calls for us to actually put this sleeve over the 2 and form them together, and then we're going to be using these gold screws instead to actually form it all together. So let's go ahead and do that, and I'll show you what the final product looks like. So now I've attached these 4 screws right through. They actually come out the other side. I don't know if that was intentional, but they do, and they form up into this this long piece here that attaches everything together. Okay, so let's take a look at what the next steps has us do, and I'll follow through with that. So as you can see, I went ahead and put another black screw onto this framing piece right here, and then I put a 2-pin adapter to link this framing piece to this framing piece, and now we have 5 pieces together. Looks like that. And so we have one last piece to put here, and then we'll be almost done. So let's check that out. So I joined the 4th screw in this framing work here to this flange piece, and the next steps actually say that we should take these 2 rods and combine them together like we did earlier with the sleeve, which with those gold pins. So we'll go ahead and do that and see what the instructions have for us after that. So I got the 4 screws in. So there's a couple of different bags with gold screws you'll have at this point, and I opened these up and they just didn't fit. I assume they're for something else. They are slightly smaller diameter than the ones that we use for this particular bracket. And if you notice, this is going to form a little bit of a bow. That is what you want, because this is going to be the inner framework or the lower framework to give the Millennium Falcon its familiar dome-like shape. So you want it to be bowed like that. So that's good. Alright, so let's start assembling that with the rest of the frame and see what we end up with. So, great. Now I have all 6 pieces that I've gotten in the last few issues framed up with these support struts. All the black screws in place, the gold screws into these 4-pin connectors that hold the struts together and give it extra support in the framing. I've also noticed that they always are going to give you an extra screw no matter what you're doing, because I assume they think that you might lose one or the screw might be faulty. And so I like that they've put in some redundancies in there. So I'm not so frightened about losing a screw because I have extras, especially. So I just keep them in a safe place when I'm not using them. I still have a pretty large pile of screws that I don't know what I'm going to be doing with them next, but I'll just hold on to them for now. And once I'm finished with issue 100, I'll figure out what to do with them. But that's what that looks like. So now the framing that we have, the actual hull plates that we have, we don't actually fix those yet, but we can test fit them to this framework. So I'll go ahead and do that and show you what that looks like. Okay, so I have 3 of these framing pieces. This one I got today does not go on apparently to this yet. You want to be very careful when you're actually trying to even fit these in for test fittings, because if you didn't assemble this correctly, you actually could have a slight misalignment with these pieces in the framing work, and you don't want to bend this framing work, because I was already noticing that it's not as durable as I had hoped. It will bend under some thumb strength, and I went ahead and with this one I have a little bit of a fatigue line, metal fatigue. So after I screw that in, I'm going to have to put a little dab of glue there to just make sure that it has as much strength as possible. Obviously I'm not going to try to weld this aluminum framing. So there's that. Okay, so great. That's pretty much it for this issue. There is nothing else according to the instructions of what we're going to do with this. So I'm just going to put this with the rest of my pieces for safekeeping, and when I need to pull it out again, I will. But for right now, that's what it looks like, and I really like it. I'm really digging on it. I'm surprised we're not fitting these pieces yet with permanent screws, but I'm sure there's a method to that, so I won't argue with the designer of the actual model. So anyway, let's take a look at what we get with the next issue. With lucky issue number 13, we'll be getting more framing pieces, another exterior hull piece, and this piping work for the main hold, along with the piece we got last issue, or this issue rather. Those will form into something, I'm sure, and our main hold will be just about done, actually. So the question of the day, guys, is if you had a lightsaber, what color would it be and why? I also would like a style question. So if you think you would have a short laser blade, or short blade like my man Yoda, or if Mace Windu style purple lightsaber, maybe Darth Maul, maybe Count Dooku style. I really wonder what kind of lightsaber you guys would want if you had one. Okay, Great, guys. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and answer that question down below in the comments section. And guys, I'll see you for issue number 13.